Bitwig Studio 5.1 includes two new audio effects, Sweep and Filter Plus. Both devices bring all of the grid's filter modules and wave shapers up to the track level for direct access. Now, here with Filter Plus, we see one slot for any of the 14 available wave shapers, one slot for one of the 10 filters, and then some additional controls. So having two built-in modulator sources allows us to normal them into the cutoff of the filter. So if the incoming audio signal might be a useful source to occasionally nudge the cutoff up a bit or down, that could be handy. And the stereo LFO is also available to instantly give some life and space to the sound. Now, because these are grid-powered devices, the patch is also available with additional controls exposed, whether it's the stereo width of the LFO or the way it is shaped itself, or perhaps the keyboard tracking of the filter, in case this device is going after an instrument and you'd just like an additional way to control that parameter. Along with a bevy of simple post processes, stereo width, panning, and even wet gain built right in for doing level correction and available on the top of the device. Now, it's worth taking a moment to revisit and remember what wave shapers are in the first place. The level of the audio is factor number one. So number one, the audio comes in with its fluctuating amplitudes, which, number two, is remapped to the curve of the shaper. In this case, it's a pretty flat line. It's almost a patch chord, just a little bit of character there. And then factor three, the wave shaping amount could in fact move or be animated itself, which makes it awfully three-dimensional, kind of like its wavetable cousin. So if we were to take the amplitude modulation and say, when the level gets harder, it should push the shaper into more extreme territory. Now that we've got a dynamic process, we can pretty clearly hear the difference between a simple gentle distortion and a clipper with a little bit of character. It's cleaned up a little bit. Or a hard clipper that just directly pushes the signal up to the limit. Or a modeled diode circuit that starts in a very similar place to the hard clipper and then gives some classic controls for bending the circuit and then filtering it and flattening it out. And in this new character category are several more choices, including Soar, which will push the quietest parts of the sound when it goes into higher territory, versus their neighbor Howl, that does something similar, but still preserves energy throughout the rest of the signal for a slightly more balanced, but somewhat similar tone. And finally, while all these shapers are mostly facing in one direction, our last friend Shred here thinks of things a little bit differently. It is facing backwards. Now, on any device that has a mix knob, something that is flipping the signal around and can be blended together with its original source is going to allow for some interesting cancellation to accentuate or pop, in this case, a drum part or anything else. And that's before we enable the filter to either round it out or emphasize some of these tonal shifts going on within it. And then there is sweep. Now, once a device has two filter slots as well as a wave shaper, the signal flow is more complicated, and some new controls make a whole lot of sense. Centered in the device are a routing control that, on top of its face, actually shows you what's going on. From the leftmost position, that is straight into filter A, and then the wave shaper and out, blending, towards a middle position, which will usually be the most generous position because this is parallel. The input signal's going directly to filter A and out, and also directly to the wave shaper followed by filter B. So both filters are getting a crack at the original signal, and then morphing along the way to a fully serial path, where it's all opened up. So now filter A is going into the wave shaper, which is going into filter B for the output. Now, once we have some controls like this, we do have two filters. So what can additionally be useful is a central frequency control to grab the cutoffs of both filters and move them both either down together or up. Unless, of course, we'd like them to move in opposite directions. So this little toggle here will now allow us to move one filter down while the other goes up, which in this case of a high pass and a low pass working together, we're kind of creating our own bandpass by right now widening both sides or narrowing them, which will only get more extreme in a serial version. Now, these filters look familiar. A nice, inspired Oberheim-type high pass, followed by an equally inspired Moog-style low pass. Nice to have those different angles working together. Some familiar structural elements are available too. And then there's some new things that look a little bit different, including the entire character category. So, taking this little keyboard part, the vowels filter emulates the human vocal tract, whether it's an E, an Ah, more of an O, or any of the 27 other sounds available. So we could simply modulate the central vowel and work there, or we could blend a combination of them. Not just from this set, but other vowel sets are available as well, with modern ones with additional resolution. Or even different filter configurations, from going from more of a text-to-speech type sound to more of a vocal synthesis type tone. In the character category, there's a structure that's kind of similar here, which once you see multiple cutoffs, something interesting is going on. There is an outside filter that works as it does, and then inside of its feedback loop is some other filter that, when enabled either through feedback or other means, allows for pushing the sound back and forth a bit. So with Fizz, it's a kind of similar shift in tone that's going on, a bit formanty. And moving these filters and where they land will move the emphasis as well. So if it's just a little bit of sparkle on top of anything, That can be pretty nice and useful. Rasp, which actually adds some brightness and resonance on top of the standard filter itself. So once the brightness knob goes up, some additional tones are getting added in different places. The simple mode, just igniting one sideband. The more complex mode, turning into almost a phaser very quickly because it's warping the harmonics and nodes around it. And then a hybrid mode that blends both of those together for some additional motion. And then the elemental ripple, which is a bit strong on the resonance side with different models. Again, a nested filter inside for all the feedback. And once that becomes bigger, it can either emphasize resonant peaks or relax them in 3 different modes. The grounded earth mode that has a bit of its own motion built in. The wind mode that we heard. Or, yes, fire. And even without modulation on this filter, it tends to grab onto the harmonics and move around in its own sort of way for an interactive good time. Now, finally, with these various options, there are ways to go between them. If we started with Filter Plus, and we liked our filter, wave shaper, and modulators, we could go ahead and convert that to a sweep device, keeping them and adding filter A and the central controls on top, in case we'd like something a bit more unique. Or not. And remember, with a DAW that is quite modular, like Bitwig, it's not just the devices. Starting with a Wurlitzer type sound here, it's easy to grab the filter and push it into a place that's nice, but might be too much. Mix is not our only option for reducing things here. We do have a whole suite in Bitwig of container devices. So perhaps this filter, only living on the midband, is the perfect answer, so that the low and high can get reinforced and sparkled in their own way. And finally, yes, these are grid-based devices. So if you have a new idea, you can always right-click on either device, convert to Effects Grid, and then decide how to reshape the patch. Because what might be interesting here, I like the chain so much that I wish it would just recurse and feedback forever. Welcome to Bitwig 5.1. 10 new characters, available for any track.